Good evening, Antony Higginbotham, your local Member of Parliament here in Burnley and Padiham, for my next Facebook Live Q&A surgery almost on a whole range of topics. You'll remember the last one I did was in January, 3 weeks ago, and we tried a slightly different format. Rather than me just talking to this screen, I've got Councillor Jamie McGowan here, Councillor in Hapton With Park. He joined me on the last one, and he was, I think it's fair to say, your Andrew Marr. Asked me the questions, but also probed a little bit if I wasn't getting to it. And so we got loads of comments in that really worked quite well. So we thought we'd try it again, not let it go too long before we do another one. So we've left it 3 weeks, which sounds, probably about right. So Jamie's with us again, and he's going to answer. No, he's going to ask questions. And
you'll be doing the answering.
Wishful thinking, maybe. And we'll give it a minute or so just to let a few more people join. I can see we've got some people on the line already. We've got some people joined.
Yeah, there's a few already joined, which is good.
Awesome. And it helps me because I don't have to keep track of all the questions and comments coming in because it can be a bit distracting or... Oh man, I can't multitask, so we're told. Although I think I did do an all right job.
Yeah. You had work experience in your office, didn't you, the other week?
I did. I had young Will. He's at high school. And he came in. He was with me for 2 weeks, met the whole team, and got to see all of what it means to be a Member of Parliament up here in Burnley and Padiham. So he joined me for a couple of meetings. He was out knocking on doors or delivering some stuff with me. And for me, work experience is really important. I never got to meet my MP when I was in school. I remember I was studying politics at A-level, and I emailed the Labour MP at the time and the Conservative parliamentary candidate and said, I'm interested in politics. I didn't really have a political affiliation, but I was interested. Can I come and just see what you do? And the only one to reply was the Conservative candidate. And it's Jake Berry, who's now the Member of Parliament over in Rosendale and Darwin, because that's where I grew up, in Haslingden. And so I went and spent time with him, and I learnt so much from it. And so I think it's really important. I think you can talk about how you engage young people in politics, or you can actually take part in engaging young people in politics.
Yeah, it's true.
And so whether it's work experience or going to Burnley College and doing a Q&A, or, speaking to young members when they join the local party and encouraging them to get more involved, or going right to the start, going into primary schools and doing the school tour, which I love. So, if anyone's watching and they're looking to do work experience or kids or grandkids, and there's a twinkle of an inkling and an interest in politics, then drop me a message. Get in touch, because I'm always happy to host people. And just on that, there should be a link somewhere on the post to my website. And so if I don't cover any questions, drop me a message. If you want to check out some of the big news from Burnley and Padiham, go to the website. And you can sign up to my email newsletter on there. I send one out every single week. But if you can't see it on the screen, I'll make sure it's in the comments afterwards. But it's www.antonyhig, so that's ANTONYHIG.co.uk.
And on that note, let's crack into the questions. There's been a number that have come in. Obviously, we've had the questions come in over the past 2 days, and then already starting now, people are asking questions. I think the big topic that's been on the news today, you'll have seen this already, and one of the comments already is referencing this, is the news today saying that we've gone into a recession.
Yes.
So what would you say to those who are looking at this and thinking, it's not good news?
Yeah. Well, look, it's not good news, right? No one wants their economy to be in a technical recession. So for those who don't know, a recession is 2 quarters of contraction, so minus GDP growth. Now, it is very shallow. That's the first thing to say. So we're not talking negative growth of 1-2%. We're talking negative growth. I think it's 0.3% was confirmed today. So very shallow. Is exactly the same thing we're seeing from across Europe. And this is the result of high energy prices, high inflation, and we know This is exactly why one of the Prime Minister's top priorities was to halve inflation, because high inflation impacts the economy. We talk about inflation often from just a household bills perspective, but it impacts businesses as well. And is it a bad thing to have a recession? Of course it is. But should people be looking at this worried about the long-term economy? Absolutely not. Our economy is in robust shape. The fundamentals of the British economy are strong. Inflation, people will have seen just the other day, has held at 4%. So all the pundits were saying we were going to see inflation tick back up, and it's not. And it's not because we're managing the economy in a responsible way. So rather than doing things just for political gain, we're trying to manage the economy in a way that says we're going to focus on supporting businesses, supporting households, supporting families, and that pays off. Now, it means we've suffered this slight technical recession, but if you look at the forecasts, our economy is due to grow faster than almost any of the big European economies. We would forecast this, right? So the forecast is broadly, in train. So not a good thing, but we've got a plan. And as long as we stick to the plan and we don't start doing things that are, spending money we can't afford to spend, seeing inflation tick up, as long as we can, hold the line, this will be a short-lived, shallow recession, come back out, and the economy, you speak to any business in Burnley, business is going well.
Yeah, well, you kind of answered some of the comments that have come in just around that, how long will it last, etc. I think you've kind of covered that topic off, Anthony. One other thing that has been in the news, and you'll be well aware of it, we had questions before about it, and also now there's Deborah's talking about it. Basically, how many people have contacted you about this faulty cavity wall insulation? And the collapse of SSB law, and then the major legal bills that people have been facing because of that.
Yeah, it's an appalling situation, right? These are the normal people, right? They're you and I, who got insulation put into their home to do the right thing, to make your home more energy efficient, use government grants to do it. It was faulty, defective, damaged the home. And a law firm came along and said, we can help you on this no-win, no-fee basis. And that law firm has collapsed. And the other firms on the other side have come asking for their costs. And because the law firm that came knocking didn't do the right thing, didn't follow the rules, they didn't take out an insurance policy to cover those costs, people have received these massive legal bills. We're talking life-changing amounts of money. Now, I've brought this up in Parliament. I was the first member of Parliament in the whole country to bring this up in Parliament. I asked the Leader of the House of Commons if I could enlist her help in trying to get this resolved. She pointed me in the direction of the Secretary of State for Levelling Up. So I've written to him, to Michael Gove, to ask him to help.
Well, I'm going to ask that. So after the intervention that you made in Parliament regarding this, you followed it up since so you wrote to...
Yeah, so wrote to Michael, and this is what politics is about, right? It's not just, people see the question you ask in Parliament, but there's so much more that goes on. Rightly so, right? If you're trying to deal with an issue, the question in Parliament is important, but it's part of the process. So written to Michael Gove, written to the Secretary of State for Justice, because this is about law firms and the courts and how it's been abused. So I asked the Justice Secretary to look into it as well. I've written to the administrators of SSB, because they're the people responsible for the firm now. I've probably sent 10 letters. The Legal Ombudsman, the Solicitors Regulation Authority. I'm basically going to everyone I can think of to try and help, to try and get some kind of justice for victims. And justice is seeing those bills gone, right?
Obviously, that's it.
Because people should not be in this position where they did something in good conscience and they're now looking at going, well, I can't afford to keep the house and stuff like that. So I'm meeting with a law firm in the next week or so. I'm also meeting with an organisation that represents cavity wall installers to see if there's anything we can do there. So there's lots of moving parts to try and do it, but I guess anyone watching who's impacted, rest assured I'm going to keep trying to fight your corner. And I mean, I've been contacted by people from all across the country. And so if you're one of those people watching, you're not from Burnley and Padding, but you are impacted, do contact your MP, whoever they are. Point them in my direction. If you don't know how to phrase it or anything, just contact them and say, I'm impacted by SSB law and the collapse there. Can you go to Antony Higginbotham? Because I'm genuinely determined to see this put right.
Yeah, which good. Yeah. Well, I hope that answers Deborah's question. Moving on to NHS.
Yeah.
Somebody, Denise, is asking, how far have you got with the meeting that you were having with the chief exec of Blackburn, the hospital, Blackburn Hospital?
So that meeting was on Friday of last week. I met with the chief exec of East Lancashire Hospitals Trust, which is the trust that runs Royal Blackburn, Burnley General, Accrington Victoria, etc. Yeah. So I met with him and some of his management team, the director of nursing, the chief operations officer, and we had a really good, constructive discussion, I think is how I would put it. And then we walked into the emergency department and saw it. And I mean, it's fair to say that there's massive demand. Right? I mean, that's not going to be news to anyone. There's massive demand there. That comes with an ageing population. It comes from actually being really good on ambulance turnaround times. Right, Royal Blackburn is actually one of the best hospitals for getting people out of an ambulance and into the hospital and getting the ambulances back out there. And people will remember some trusts elsewhere in the country, some hospitals were less good at that last year and they had ambulances queuing at the door. We don't do that.
Right.
And the trust was saying it's a bit of a victim of its own success there because it gets people through the door into the hospital and then it's got a lot of people. But there is a plan. So
I was going to say is that
they know it's not up to the standard that I expect, that residents expect, or that they themselves expect. So they're currently in the process of building some new cubicles that will allow them to treat more patients, move patients off a corridor quicker.
I was going to say, is this to stop because people have been saying, corridors and...
They need more cubicles. Yeah. The long and the short of it is you need more cubicles if you've got more patients. Right. Because if you don't have more cubicles, they're going to be on a corridor. And we know that's not the care that people want and deserve. So they've got a plan to get that number up. Now, we had a conversation about whether the number they're going to hit is the right number and whether we can push further. And I've told them I'm very keen to work with them to go beyond that number. I know 2 other MPs in East Lancashire are. So I think there's, I'd love to tell people there's a silver bullet here. There's not, but I'm committed to it. I know other East Lancashire MPs are, the trust is, and their big ask to me, and so I'm going to relate to people, is go to the right place. Because sometimes what they find is people who could go to Burnley urgent care go to Blackburn. And sometimes they even say, actually, do you know what? There's a really short waiting time at Burnley urgent care. Do you want to go there? And people feel more comfortable at Blackburn. But that builds up the pressure at Blackburn, and it means we're underusing Burnley Hospital, and we don't want to do that because I want to keep seeing investment in Burnley Hospital. But that means we've got to demonstrate why it's so important. So there's not a silver bullet. I wish I could tell you that there was. But I'm working with the trust to find those things that will allow them to keep pushing onwards.
Yeah. Well, I think you've kind of answered what Denise was saying in response while you were talking. She's basically talking about her brother spending 3 days on a corridor and then saying we need more beds.
Yeah, absolutely we do. Yeah. We need more beds in the emergency department, and then making sure people are moved quicker from the emergency department to whatever medical ward they need to be on. Is really, really important. The trust knows it, I know it. I'll say the same thing to everyone watching that I said to the trust. If you've got an example, send it to me. If there's an instant of care that you don't think has been adequate, send it to me. One, because it helps me build up that picture that I spoke about on the last Q&A, and then I get to have that conversation with the trust. And I told the trust I'll be sending them all on because I think it's really important that the trust sees the same thing I see. And the one final thing I'm going to say on it, unless you've got other questions on it, is most people have a really good experience. That was the thing that the Trust was really keen to point out, that there are problems. There is pressure points, there are times of day, times of week that are really, really busy. But it's not uniform, right? And there are lots of people, and I don't want people watching to be thinking that you shouldn't go to Blackburn if you need care, because you absolutely should. Right. It is far better to be at hospital, whether it's Burnley Urgent Care, Blackburn Urgent Care, or Blackburn A&E, if you're in need of that kind of medical treatment, than to not go because you're fearful. So call 111, get NHS advice. I've told them that one of the things they can do is put on their website what the wait time is in Burnley Urgent Care, Blackburn Urgent Care, and Blackburn A&E.
Be useful to know.
Yeah, it is on their website already. It's just really difficult to find. Right. And if you were, a relative, you're thinking, right, okay, something's happened, need to get to urgent care. Obviously, not appropriate in an emergency, but in urgent care, you think about it a bit more. You got a couple of extra minutes. If on the main website of ELHT, of East Lancs Hospitals Trust, you could go on and it said the quickest time for urgent care centres is Burnley, then that's the one you go to. You don't even need it to tell you what it is everywhere. You just need it to say, right now, if you need an urgent care centre, go to this one because it's the one you're going to get treated at quickest.
Next question, Anthony. This will be a little bit different to the other questions. Somebody, Tash is called, has said, can you give us 3 points of why you believe you should stay as the MP in this constituency? Now, I don't think you should get tied up in long, but 3 quick fire why you think you should be, why you should stay as the MP to answer Tash's question.
So the first thing I would say is I've got a proven track record of delivering for Burnley and Padiham. Yeah. Right. Since I got elected, we've seen more than £100 million worth of government investment come into Burnley and Padiham. That's Levelling Up Fund, It's Burnley College, it's Padiham Blood Defences. It's actually making stuff happen. And ultimately, that's what politics is about. Yeah. It's not about just saying things, it's about actually delivering for people. The second is I listen to people. Yeah. Right. The number of surgeries I do, Facebook Q&A lives. If you're going to have a member of Parliament represent you down in the House of Commons, you want them to listen. And I'm not just saying it, I genuinely think I've got, compared to all the MPs we've had in the past, and it's because I care about the job and the people, all of you, our town, our borough. So I think you should listen. Yeah. And the third is kind of linked to that. I care. This is my home. I share all the things you do. I drink in the same pubs. It's where my family are. And I think you can have a member of Parliament who is, parachuted in from Manchester, as the Labour candidate is. Yeah, he is. Yeah. Who's never really been here, never experienced what it means to be, even if you go not from Burnley, right? Lancashire, East Lancashire, we're a special place where we do amazing things. And I think unless you've grown up in this area, you don't really get it. So that's what I mean when I say I care about it.
I thought you were going to go down the route of positivity, because the one thing that I've always seen is, whether it's Labour or whatever, standing up in the Commons and always talking Burnley and Padiham down. Which I think it's fair to say you raise the challenges, but you always do put the good forward as well.
Yeah, do you know, when I first got this job, and part of it's conscious and part of it's unconscious, as I said, we do brilliant things here. Right, the UK is now the 8th largest manufacturer in the whole world, bigger than France in manufacturing. Right? Yeah. That wasn't the case in 2010. Yeah. In 2010, manufacturing was dropping. And people will remember it. Now we're the 8th largest, we're growing at an exponential rate. And I love standing up in Parliament and saying that's done in Burnley. Yeah. We contribute to that success. And I think you can either be the politician who stands up and says, we've got all these great things, and to make us better and push us further and higher and deal with some of our challenges, we need X and Y and Z. Or you can be the kind of politician who stands up and says how terrible everything is, and so government needs to address every problem. And I think what that does is it talks to your mindset. Do you have a positive vision and a positive mindset about the area you want to represent or do represent?
Just a serial mourner.
Or are you, just looking for the politics of play?
Yeah.
To make political points without actually trying to address the issues. And I think, sadly, for too long, Burnley has had the latter.
Yeah, and I agree with that. This, for all those who are commenting now about SSB, Anthony has touched on SSB already earlier on, and fully. I mean, you don't need to go into it again, but fully behind everyone, fully behind all those affected. Raised it in the comments and is continuing with it.
Yeah, raised it in the comments, written to basically everyone I can think of. I'm going to keep pushing the cause. Drop me an email if you're one of those people impacted. If you're from Burnley and Padiham, if you're not from Burnley and Padiham, contact your MP. This one, I actually think, I don't know if Michaela's watching, but a lady called Michaela actually commented, I only saw this earlier on today, but man and another local business were burgled just before Christmas. Lots of damage and a significant amount stolen. We haven't seen one single police officer and have zero hopes of the thief being arrested, even though we have his name and CCTV footage. What would you say to Michaela? Email me, please email me, because that's not okay, right? We've got a commitment from the police at a national level that every single burglary is going to be investigated. I met the local police just the other week, and we spoke about, I don't know where Michaela's business is, but we spoke about town centre, we spoke about rural areas, and the police are committed to using the extra resources they've got to actually dealing with some of these, what I would consider root and branch policing issues. So if there are examples where that's not happening, I want to take that up, because I want to understand why that's not happened.
Yeah, and I thought you'd say as much. I mean, Jim says, why do the Conservatives keep saying we have an extra 20,000 police officers? All we have is us back in the 2010 figures when George Osborne got rid of 20,000. Crime is raising, we need lots more.
Why do I say that we've got 20,000 extra police officers?
Because
we've got 20,000 extra police officers. In fact, in Lancashire, we've got an extra 612 compared to the day I got elected. Right, so what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about the change I've managed to deliver for our area. Yeah. But I always think it's interesting. Those on the left of politics, my political opponents, always bring up this, we want to go back to 2010. Everything's about 2010. And I don't, for the life of me, understand it. We've got more police officers today than we had during almost every year, bar one, of the last Labour government. So the last Labour government was in power for 13 years, and we've got more police officers today than all but one of those years. Right, so 2010 is only picked by those who've got a political axe to grind. Right? Why do I say we've got 20,000 more police officers? Because we've got 20,000 more police officers, and crime actually is falling. So if you look at the ONS crime data, they've tracked two things. One is including computer misuse, one isn't. Computer misuse is things like online fraud. Crime is falling. The only one that's increasing is computer-based crime, fraud and stuff like that. Is that a problem? Of course it is. And actually, this last week, government's launched a fraud tool to get more information. If you're a bit less savvy online and you need some extra help, I'll post a link to it in the comments. Why is that crime growing? Because digital is becoming more and more important in our lives. So is there more to do on online crime? Of course there is. But the crime that that your average police officer, your Bobby on the beat, is going to be able to deal with, that's falling. Why is it falling? Because we've got 612 extra officers here in Lancashire, and that is making a real difference. Yeah,
just on that point, Margaret raises Burnley Town Centre, and I know you've been quite involved in Burnley Town Centre and some of the ASB that we've seen there. Have you got an update on what's been going on in the town centre in terms of that issue?
Yeah, so as I said, I've been talking to the police about this for a little while, and I want to see every single part of Burnley and Padiham having the right police officers for the type of area that it is. We are seeing more police officers moved onto the town centre beat, so there's been a historical lack of police officers. A lot of that is because we're hiring 20,000 extra officers, but it takes time to train them. You can't hire someone off the street, say, here's your warrant card, off you go. So we're training them up. And those are coming through the pipeline, and and lots of them are going on to the town centre beat as well. There's extra operations, so there's one called Hot Grip. That's a town centre policing operation. So there's lots happening in the town centre. Also having discussions with Burnley Council, the Police and Crime Commissioner, the town centre bid, to really look at what we can do in the town centre to try and tackle ASB in particular. So that's having innovative conversations about the Public Spaces Protection Order that the council have in place. Are we prosecuting enough people using that PSPO? Do we need to augment it? And people will remember in October we got another £20 million from government to be spent over the next decade in improving our area. One of the things that I'm sure we'll have a conversation with the town board that's being formed, one of the things we're going to talk about is can we use some of that to bring in some town centre wardens because they can help with all of it. So not a simple answer, not a quick answer, but police officer numbers in town centre are on the way up. ASB is being absolutely tackled, and we're going to relook at Ops and Sherian to see where the next target area will be, and then also working with other stakeholders to see what the next stage might be. Yeah.
Sean talks about 2,000 empty properties within Burnley. Yeah. He talks about rents and saying that they're extortionate. Basically, he's asking, do you agree that the council should purchase these homes and then rent them out? So effectively, council houses, because at the moment, Burnley Borough Council, as we know, doesn't own houses. Calico does that function that used to be done by the council. What's your position on this?
So, you're right, we've got too many empty vacant homes, and every time there's a big new housing development, understandably everyone, myself included, looks at it and goes, right, okay, well, you're building another X number of homes, what about all the empty ones? Do I think the councils should buy them and convert them and own them and rent them out? Look, I mean, I don't think the council should be in the business of becoming a property developer, right? That's really important because it only uses your tax money. You know, and so if we're going to ask it to start doing a whole new thing, it's going to come down the line and say, well, we want to use all your taxes and we want to hike them and we want to ask you to do something else. But should we have policies in place to help incentivise private landlords to come in and renovate properties? Absolutely we should. Why should the council take on the financial risk of building a whole, renovating a whole lot of houses, probably then giving it to Calico because it doesn't know how to be a landlord anymore?
It would end up giving it to Calico, that's the point.
So you end up paying for it, someone else ends up taking all the rent. That to me isn't a good option, right? A better option is, so we're doing something called the Renters Reform Bill in Parliament. That's about changing the rental market. One, to make it more stable if you're a tenant. But the second is trying to encourage landlords into the sector. So it's got a dual purpose. And we've still got to make sure we get that balance right. There's a couple of things on both sides that I think we need to tweak. But it's about encouraging landlords to either get in or stay in the rental market. And then we can, and I've had this conversation with Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, about how we then incentivise, either through tax or mortgage policy or whatever it is, get people to renovate those empty houses, bring them back into the housing market, rent them out, and then the Renters Reform Bill should give people secure tenancies.
Yeah, I mean it is for the older generation watching this, they will remember Bleak House and the way Burnley Borough Council actually run council houses. I don't think that's a record that Burnley Borough Council can and should be proud of. So I buy into that, and I say that as a councillor. So another area that people are talking about is retirement age. Now this splits into a couple of different things, Anthony. Irene first off starts by saying current retirement age and state pension is now 66 and 67 in my case. Why is it necessary to keep on raising the retirement age? And once you've answered that, there's been a number of questions coming about the Waspy Women campaign. We'll get on to that. But to answer Irene's question,
why do we raise it?
Why is the pension age raised?
So the simple answer is we raised the retirement age. This was a decision taken years ago. It's on a bit of an escalator because life expectancy increases. Right? People are spending more and more time in retirement than was originally envisaged. That comes at a cost to the taxpayer, and we've got to make sure there's generational fairness there between those who are in work and those who are out of work. And so that's why it raises. It rises to keep that generational fairness, to make sure we can offer those who are retired a safe, secure, financially stable, prosperous retirement, whilst also making sure that we don't tax people at such a level that you'd have to if you kept the retirement age at 60.
Okay, well, following on from that, Yvonne, Georgine, and another lady a bit further up now, have asked about WASPy women. Basically, they all say the same thing. They're all backing the WASPy campaign, and are saying, what's your position on it? The only one thing that's added in is there is a bill coming through Parliament, the State Pensions Compensation Bill. It's had its first reading, it's going for second reading in April. And basically just asking, would you be supporting the WASPy Women campaign?
So on the basic premise of the whole campaign, so the whole issue started because of the equalisation of retirement ages. And on that principle, I am totally in favour. I'm not going to beat about the bush. I believe men and women should have the same retirement age. I think it is a gross unfairness that we have treated men and women differently. You know, men traditionally are in the most manual professions, and yet we ask them to keep doing it longer than women. Right? As a basic point of fairness, I don't think that's fair. Okay. So I agree with equalisation. The WASPy campaign is about the amount of time that people had to make that change. You know, whether they had enough time to make suitable arrangements if their retirement age was changing. And I've always said, and I'm going to stick to it now, I won't make a promise I don't know if I can keep.
Yeah.
And this is the simplest thing to do in politics would be to sit here and say, yes, I agree entirely with you, and isn't it terrible? And then end this Facebook Live, raise some questions in Parliament, and nothing changes. And people would then rightly lose faith in politicians. I never promise something I can't deliver, or if I don't think I can deliver it. What I can reassure everyone is it's something I continue to speak to ministers about. I'm not aware of that legislation, but let me go away and check it. And if you're watching and you've not emailed me about it and you're in that cohort, do email me about it, because I'll read the legislation and come back to you with what I think. That's probably rather than answering about the legislation without reading it, let me go away and check it.
Okay, thank you. Claire, quick one. Claire just says, it's going back to the policing thing. Yeah. Can you raise with the police motorised bikes and scooters in the town, Townley Park, Parliament Street area next time you see them? I think that's one to put on your list, because you do raise the periodically, don't you?
Yes, and yes. So the police are taking some action to try and tackle this. So you'll notice, for example, that quite a few petrol stations in the local area now have signs saying if your vehicle doesn't have a registration plate on it, we're not going to sell you fuel. That's for that reason. Because actually a lot of the scrambler bikes you see have no registration plate on them. They go tearing up the fields and the hills. Yeah. So by saying we're not going to fill you up and give you the fuel, you make life that bit harder. But yes, I will absolutely raise it with the police. We spoke about the town centre one last time I was with them. And they've had a really successful operation in the town centre to tackle e-bikes and e-scooters. Yeah. So if there's other areas that they need to look at, I'm sure they'd be willing to do it, and I'll definitely raise it with them.
Brilliant. Somebody is saying about apprenticeships. So it were apprenticeship week. Were it last week? No,
it was last week. Yeah,
I think it was last week, weren't it? And talking about the numbers and saying the numbers are down. Why?
The number of apprenticeships.
Yeah, I think that they might be looking at the national figure rather than the local figure. I don't know.
So I mean, what I would say is since 2010, which is when we had this massive expansion of apprenticeships, we've created more than 12,500 apprenticeships. That is more than lots and lots of areas in the country. Last year, 2023, we did 700 plus. Obviously, you're going to see some variation across years as business confidence changes. Last year, we went through a massive energy crisis where energy bills were really high. So not unusual that businesses might have been relooking at their staffing, but you know, we are still seeing apprenticeships rise, go up. More and more people take them on. Every conversation I have with Burnley College, who run Themis, which is our big apprenticeship provider, we have conversations about apprentices, and I mean they're going hell for leather, right? They're doing brilliant work, and there are more and more professions now where you can get into an apprenticeship. So now it doesn't matter whether you're going to be a nurse, a accountant, teacher, space engineer. Yeah. So I think the stat is 70% of occupations basically is now covered by an apprenticeship. So you're going to see some variance year by year, but in Burnley and Badiham, we are doing far more than most areas of the country. And I think it's really important we do. This is the future of young people. They're starting their career. I think it's a brilliant way to learn and get into the world of work. Far better, you know, I say to someone who went to university, I know you did as well, if I'd had the option to do a degree apprenticeship, I probably would have done. You know, you don't pay the same for it. You're learning on the job, get professional experience. You've got a job at the end of it.
Well, that's the thing.
In most cases,
come out of university, they always say, well, "What experience have you got?"
Yeah.
You're like,
so, I think it's a win-win.
Here's a nice one for you. Callum from the cricket club is saying that the War Memorial project is supported, is now complete, and they're looking to open it towards the end of March. Will you be available to attend?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. That's really good news.
Yeah.
Top Callum. Well done.
Another area that people are talking about, this always gets raised with you, potholes.
Yeah.
What is happening with the state of the roads in Burnley? What is happening with the state of the roads in Padiham, Hapton, Worsthorne, Cliviger? Like, what's happening with the state of the roads? Are we fixing the potholes is basically the question that people are asking.
Yes. I mean, I hope so.
Yeah.
Potholes are the bane of everyone who drives a car. It's the bane of your life. Yes, we're filling them in. There's probably you can't really fill them in at the same rate that you need to, right? There's so many that it's going to take a long time to deal with them, and it's a constantly evolving problem. So it doesn't really matter how many you fill in. There's always going to be more to do. There's not an end point.
We'll never get to the end.
No, we'll never get to the end of it because there'll always be another pothole because the weather, you know, creates new ones.
Yeah.
But we've got more money for Lancashire County Council to do road maintenance in general, just into their normal core budget.
Yeah.
That was something that I was really committed to when I got elected, was helping LCC get that extra money. And then people will have seen the HS2 decision, so we've cancelled HS2 north of Birmingham. That has freed up tens of billions of pounds, which is going on a whole range of transport projects, including lots here. One of them is we've got basically £250 million going to Lancashire County Council for the next couple of years to help them do it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be feeding in roads that they need to now work up a plan for. And government has basically said, we're giving you this £250 million, you now need to create a plan. What roads need doing? So I'm going to be feeding in ideas if residents have streets in particular that they think need doing. If you go to my website, there's a road watch section. You can write on there where the road is, what the issue is. So is it potholes? Is it fly tipping? You know, whatever it is, put it on there because that all comes back to me. I go through all of it and I'm going to be reporting them all to LCC. So yes, we will be fixing them.
Yeah.
But, and I've got to say this, fixing potholes does create some roadworks. Like it is the bane of my life that these two things combine to create.
Well, Anthony, a number of people, Jonathan and another person as well, is asking about Town to Turf.
Mm-hmm.
So when is it going to be finished? And is the main question, when is it going to be finished? Yeah, that's what they're asking.
So I've asked for an update on the full timeline because it seems to change, which is frustrating. And I know it frustrates everyone who will be watching this as well because it causes no end of pain and suffering as you're sat in traffic jams. The whole scheme should be done by summer.
That's what I've been told.
So the whole Town to Turf thing should be done by summer.
Yeah.
What I've asked for though is a more detailed timeline of what work is being done when. So when will we see all of the construction stuff taken away from Harry Potter's Way further down the culvert. And as soon as I've got it, I guarantee I'll be putting it on Facebook, because I know how frustrating it is, particularly for those coming from that side of the borough into town or trying to get onto the M65, trying to go through all of that. I'm pushing your corner, and I'm going to keep doing. We all want, as we said, we've got potholes. We all want to see them improved. We want new road surfaces. And this delivers part of that.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think there's been a bit of confusion about Town to Turf. So I have been listening to a number of comments saying, "Oh, is it turning Yorkshire Street into a one-way?" It's definitely not, is it?
Absolutely not. So Yorkshire Street will always be two-way.
Yeah. And then this one, the roundabout. Why take the old roundabout to put a new roundabout? It's temporary, that roundabout.
Yes.
It's going to be a junction, right?
Yeah, it's going to be traffic light based junction. That was a decision taken by Burnley Council. They got some town planners to do a piece of work to look at it and look at how you could improve traffic flow. And they came to the conclusion that traffic lights would improve flow. So that's why it's moving. So the current roundabout, the one basically painted on the road, that is temporary. And you're going to see them over the next couple of months start to install. And you can see them widening the road already to put the right structure in place. But it is temporary.
Yeah. Sandra just wants to thank you for promoting Padiham as well as Burnley. In everything you do in Parliament, she says it was never mentioned before on a parliamentary level, and thanks for all you're doing for the town. That's what I just wanted to say that to you.
Well, thank you, Sandra. I mean, Padiham is... I live this side of the borough. I live up in Hapton. Padiham, I think, is one of our jewels in the crown. That's not to say Burnley's not great. It is, and it's got lots going for it, especially now it's got Pioneer Place and all of that. But Padiham, I think, is brilliant. You look at Padiham now, and it's got tons of independent shops. That's Padiham's big sell. It's just started late night shopping on a Thursday. We want people to come and visit it. It's got some brilliant businesses there as well. And it goes back to that first question. I think it was the first question you asked about. One of the first, why people because I care.
Yeah.
I care about Padiham just like I care about Burnley and Hapton and Whistle and Cliviger.
Just to answer this one quickly for Sean.
Yeah.
Talking of roundabouts, is it true there are any plans to remove the Manchester Road roundabout? I haven't heard that. Can you confirm whether you've heard that or not?
The Manchester Road roundabout up near where Real was?
Yeah.
No.
No, I didn't think so. Okay.
So they are doing some work up there. You'll see lots of roadworks happening. That's to change some of the site because of the supermarket that, as I understand, is going where Real Cinema used to be, but it is staying as a roundabout.
On a positive about the Town to Turf, Terry says, superb Antony, brought new growth and potential to the borough and achieved more in 4 years than under Labour and the Lib Dems in so many years. I thought you'd like to hear that one.
Thanks, Terry.
I think the other one, and there's a few comments that are on this post as well, and you did get a couple of comments beforehand. What do you make of what Azhar Ali, the Labour candidate, or was previously the Labour candidate, said about the Jews in Israel? Is one question that you received. And there's, to add in, Antony, there's someone putting a Palestinian flag on the post, and there's another one talking about something about why you supported the flattening of Gaza or something like that. What's your take on this whole issue? What's your position, and then what do you make about the Labour Party position that we've seen over the last week or so?
How to start this? So, if I take the Labour Party issue that we've had over the last few days first.
Yeah, what do you make of Azhar Ali's comments?
I was disgusted, genuinely disgusted by them.
Yeah.
So I was in Israel the last few days. I got back yesterday. I was there for 3 days. And I read Azhar's comments. Councillor Azhar Ali, we should say, he's a Labour Party councillor here in Lancashire.
Well, he's the leader of the Lancashire Labour.
Yeah. So he's not unknown to us, right? He might be the parliamentary candidate for Rochdale, but he's leader of Lancashire Labour. As I understand it, still today.
Stood in Pendle as well.
Stood in Pendle. I was in Israel when I read what he'd said. And for those who haven't seen, he said that Israel planned the 7th of October, basically.
Yeah.
I read about it on a day I met a survivor of the Nova Music Festival, a festival that saw hundreds of young people murdered. So when I say I was disgusted, I'm being as polite as I can be.
Mm.
His views, his anti-Semitic viewpoint has absolutely no place in politics or indeed in the country. I have so little traction with it. You know, we saw this in the Jeremy Corbyn years of the Labour Party. Anti-Semitism made acceptable. It isn't acceptable, it's disgusting, it's wrong, and we've seen through history what happens when it runs rife. Anti-Semitism is what drove the Holocaust. Anti-Semitism was what drove the 7th of October. We have to stamp it out. And so, you know, do I think he should be a councillor, let alone a parliamentary candidate or member of parliament? Absolutely not. I think if he had any common decency, he would resign, as would every single Labour Party councillor who was at that meeting, he said it, and who didn't challenge him. Because if someone said that at a meeting I was in, I can guarantee I wouldn't be sitting on my hands and saying nothing. Yeah.
Well, you saw the parliamentary candidate in Hanburn's also had the Labour work removed.
Yeah, look, apparently this was at a, you know, apparently Councillor Ali said this at a meeting that multiple Labour candidates, councillors, members were at, which does raise the question, who else was there? Yeah, I noticed that the Burnley Labour candidate has been notable in saying absolutely nothing, despite coming out previously and saying what a brilliant guy Azhar Ali is when he got selected, what a brilliant guy Graham Jones is, the parliamentary candidate in Hyndburn, who's also been suspended. Right? That says a lot. That says a lot about your values. If you think those people are stand-up people, that says an awful lot. On the issue generally, look, I don't recognise at all the characterisation that you read out. On the 7th of October, Israel suffered the biggest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust. To put it into context, if the same number of people had died in Britain, relative to population, we'd be talking about more than 10,000 British people murdered in a terrorist attack.
Yeah, it's big.
Of course you would want to get rid of that threat.
Yeah.
Right. In one of the places I visited in the last few days, you get 15 seconds from when the air raid sirens go off to say rockets have been launched from Gaza to get into a shelter. 15 seconds. And they lived with that in daily life. It is appalling that anyone could suggest that that's okay. That Israel should put up with that level of terrorist threat on its borders, because we wouldn't.
No.
But that absolutely doesn't mean that you can't say, and you can, and I do say, I care about Palestinian lives. Of course I do. Every day this conflict goes on is a tragedy. It's a tragedy for the Palestinians who have been killed. It's a tragedy for those who have been displaced and having to move to other parts of Gaza. It's a tragedy for the hundreds of thousands of Israelis who can't move back to their home because there's still a risk there, whether they're in the northern Israel, subject to attack from Hezbollah, or in southern Israel, subject to continued rocket attack from Hamas. There is no good none of this is good. But you can't end that by just saying, Israel, put down your weapons. Rockets are still being fired. How does this end? Well, we need the 134 hostages that Hamas are holding in Gaza to be released. 134 people taken from their homes or from the music festival, dragged out of their bed, dragged into Gaza. Release them. Release the hostages. At that point, you can start talking about a sustainable ceasefire. Okay.
I think you're quite strong on your position on that, and it's fair enough. You take that position. You've been consistent with it. Stephen thinks that you skipped his question.
All right.
You knew you would skip it.
Go on.
But basically, I'm going to ask Stephen's question now because obviously he's been waiting and watching. I think going back, his question were about is it about youth? Is it about youth? I just need to find it. There's been a few come through. But this is something, I don't know if this is Stephen's question. I'm going to double check this now whilst you answer this. But youth provision within Burnley and Padiham, what we're doing about it, do you think it needs needs boosting? What's your position on it?
Yeah. So, Stephen, first of all, this is exactly why it's helpful me having Jamie here, because it is so difficult to keep up with all the comments. It's really difficult when you're doing it on your own, and now it's just been proven it's difficult even when you've got someone else here helping you. What are we doing for youth provision? I mean, look, I agree wholeheartedly with the premise of the question, which is, without proper youth provision, lots of other issues aren't dealt with. Antisocial behaviour is a key part of it, educational attainment, all of those things. So what the government did is it launched something called the Youth Investment Fund, and my job is to get some of that fund here in Burnley and Padiham and the surrounding areas, and we have done that. So of the Youth Investment Fund, we've had 2 rounds so far. The last round saw almost £1 million go to Burnley Boys and Girls Club, which is based upon Bardon Lane. And that's massively expanding their facilities. And actually, the Prime Minister came to see Burnley Boys and Girls Club and what that investment was going to do just October last year. He came to see it. It's doing brilliant things, and that will result in more young people being able to be helped. But obviously it's not the full solution, because we want something in Burnley. Ideally we want something in Padiham as well, because the youth centre in Padiham got closed. That's left a massive gap. So we're doing the investment up at Burnley Boys and Girls Club, but we want to do something in Padiham, and we want to do something in Burnley Town Centre as well. One of the things, the long-term plan for towns, that's the £20 million that the Prime Minister announced when he was here in October at that Burnley Boys and Girls Club visit. So £20 million over 10 years to address things that we think need addressing in the town. So we're forming a towns board. I can guarantee youth provision is one of the things that we talk about.
Yeah.
You know, what do we use the town board to do? Well, making sure there is something for young people to do in the town is one of them, and we're going to have that conversation and see what we can do to fix it. And genuinely, if people have had ideas on that, please tell me. No one has a monopoly on good ideas. The biggest problem with youth zones is getting volunteers to run it.
Yeah. So
if anyone's out there watching going, do you know what, I could lend a hand, whether you're in Padiham or Burnley, tell us. I can easily point you to the groups that need help with running youth things.
Yeah, and there's not to mention the Burnley Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah,
they've just got like £1 million.
Yeah. Just I think you were scrolling through.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was looking.
So Burnley Boys and Girls has got £1 million. The town board, we're going to talk about it. Any ideas, send them in. But also, and I would plug this because I was one of them. Don't forget about our uniformed cadet groups. Police cadets, army cadets, air cadets, sea cadets. They're brilliant. I was an army cadet for just under 6 years. I joined when I was about 12 and a half, and I was in there right up until 18 when I went to university, and it was absolutely brilliant. I loved every minute I was in it. I learnt so much. It instills a sense of public service. It teaches you discipline. And that's true of all those cadet services. So whilst I accept that we need to do some stuff in Burnley and Padiham and keep supporting Burnley Boys and Girls Club, there is other stuff as well that our young people can get involved in. The cadets, whichever one is of interest, is one of them. So, bear all of that in mind. But I agree with the premise that we need to keep working to make sure young people have stuff to do.
This question comes from Jackie. This was put in previously as well. Kinship, special guardianship. Basically talking about financial help that's provided to those who are bringing up young children. She's thanked you for some of the help you've given her so far, but she just wanted to raise this issue with you. I think this one, it is quite a long, but I think this one might be one of them that would be better if she actually emailed you or something now, would you say?
But Jackie was it.
Jackie
dropped me an email. I think the work that kinship carers do is phenomenal. So anything I can do to help, very happy to do so. And also I think just helpful now that it's raised, because kinship carers do amazing work.
Yeah.
To look after children who really need it.
Talking of emails, there's been a couple of emails about the tax cut that comes in January, the National Insurance tax cut. Basically, a couple of people saying, Anthony, it's just a political stunt. Well, what's your take on that? Is it a political stunt or what?
No, and nobody would be right if it was. Right, I mean, the nation's finances are too important to play political games with. We said very clearly that we had to bring inflation down, that we had to get the public finances back to decent order because we had the massive expense of COVID, £400 billion spent during the COVID pandemic on everything from business grants and furlough to a whole range of other things, right? But £400 billion, that's an astronomical sum of money. Then we got the energy crisis. That was £100 billion to subsidise energy bills, to support businesses with their energy costs and all of that. So collectively, £500 billion was spent. And that meant we had to make some really difficult decisions about taxes. And, people will have seen in the news comments about fiscal drag, right? We had to freeze some tax thresholds. Yeah. And that was difficult, right? I'm a tax cutting conservative, so pulling more people into different tax bands is really uncomfortable for me. But I also believe in sound public finances and being responsible with the public's money and what we do. So if you take all of that, you can't then make, electioneering gestures. But we said if we got inflation down and returned the public finances to a sustainable position, then we would look to make sure work always pays. And we did both of those things. Inflation came down from 11% to confirm this week, still at 4%. Now we've got some way still to go from 4 down to the target of 2. But we did that, and we got the nation's finances under control, and we're still making sure we invest in public services responsibly. So having done all of that, I want to make sure, the Prime Minister wants to make sure, the Chancellor wants to make sure that work always pays, and we reward people for going through what has been economically a difficult few years. That's what the tax cut was about. And so I make no apologies for continuing to press the Chancellor to, with any fiscal headroom he's got, providing we can keep meeting those tests of bringing inflation down and managing the public finances responsibly. If we can offer more tax cuts, I think we should. Because I think the tax burden generally is too high and people should keep more of the money they earn. Because, as great as I think governments are, I think all of you know how to spend your money better than any government does.
Yeah, to that. We're coming now to the last minute, really. If it's the last past 7, right. There's been a question from Jane, a clarification, because there are changes coming. Could you clear something up for me, please? Are you now the MP for Briarfield? Seems like boundaries have changed because we used to be under Pendle. Who do I need to contact? Is it you or Andrew Stevenson? Briarfield is in the middle, but my address still reads near Nelson.
Right.
So I think she is talking about the boundary changes.
Yeah. So I get that this is really complicated for lots of people. It's not a simple process to explain. So there's been a change of parliamentary boundaries. The idea being that every MP should represent broadly the same number of people. And so they've come up with new proposals that the Burnley constituency, because the Burnley constituency needs to grow from where it is now, which is about 66,000 people, needs to grow to about 77,000 people, because that's the number all MPs should represent. Every MP should represent about 77,000 people.
Okay. And
so currently, I am underweight, ironically. So that's the target. So you've got to grow by 10,000 people. Importantly, that change only happens at a general election.
Yeah.
So as it stands today, I am the Member of Parliament for Burnley under its current constituency. And so I forget who asked the question.
It was Jane who asked the question.
Jane, your current Member of Parliament is still Andrew Stevenson. And that is the case up until the general election. At the general election, you'll be voting for the Member of Parliament for Burnley, which includes Burnley, Padiham, Briarfield.
That's the addition into the Briarfield.
So if you've got an issue today, send it to your Member of Parliament, which is Andrew Stevenson. If it's a political question about what happens in the next few years, send it to me, because I'm your parliamentary candidate, but I'm also the Member of Parliament for Burnley. So it's really difficult to explain it in a letter or in a news release, so it's always easier doing it like this. So I'm the Member of Parliament for Burnley and the parliamentary candidate for Burnley, including Briarfield. and Andrew Stevenson is the Member of Parliament for Pendle and the parliamentary candidate for Pendle and Clitheroe, which excludes Briarfield.
Makes perfect sense. A final thing. This is
Right.
Mick. This is a final thing. How much will the poll tax go up this year? And I presume he's referring to council tax.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, I have no say over it. It's set by Burnley Borough Council. If you ask me what my opinion would be, 0%.
If you ask me my opinion, it'd also be 0%.
I suspect Jamie's better placed.
Well, they're planning on putting it up by 2.99%, but there is a budget meter at the end of the month.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I've literally raised this in Parliament as well.
Yeah.
But every year it comes up, and there's been an increase of government funding every year since I've been elected for Burnley Borough Council.
That's true.
Every single year I've been the MP, I've secured more money for Burnley Borough Council, and every year the Labour Party stand up and say, "Yes, but it's not enough." Yeah. I mean, that's just the Labour line on any kind of. Anything you give them, it's not enough, and so they want to raise it even more. Look, I'll continue to advocate for a council tax freeze because I genuinely think, from looking through some council spend, and you'll see this as a councillor far more, there are things that the council can save money on. You know, I think they're spending some money on things that really ought not to have money spent on them. But unfortunately, Mick, it's not something I get to. If it was all down to me, it would be frozen at 0%. Because, as I said, I think the tax burden is too high.
Yeah, and that's
and as I understand it, the council still has significant reserves.
Oh,
and the Burnley Conservative Council Group, you're in it, right?
Yeah,
Last year proposed a freeze and had it fully funded.
Yes.
And so if you've got a fully funded council tax freeze that wouldn't impact long-term finances, it would have been funded, so it could have been 0% last year, without hitting any council services, and you still say no to it, as the Labour Party did, that tells you a lot about what their views are.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. That comes to the end. We're 3 minutes over. So, yeah, thank you.
No, thanks, Jamie. I hope, as the last one, this has been helpful and interesting on your Thursday evening. There'll be another one, probably in March, given where we are in February. So keep your eyes peeled. Submit questions when you see the announcement on Facebook, because I genuinely like doing these. I think this format's quite nice.
Yeah, it's good.
Clearly a bit more challenging for Jamie, as he's having to scroll through the comments. So if we missed anyone, please do drop me a message on my website, antonyhigg.co.uk/contact. Other than that, I wish everyone a very happy weekend. See you later.
See you later.